there is a maturity problem, or there's a maturity opportunity in using these LLMs, right? Or these harnesses around LLMs when building software. So it's not that domain modeling goes away. That's definitely not the case. We need multimodal modeling. You need to event storming at the wall with people and sticky notes. You need visual representation. You need behavior observed in the room. You need all these things to really fully understand the domain deeply. And you need textual representation that you formalize and that can become code later. So the point is not to use LLMs instead of all the collaborative modeling techniques. That is absolutely not the case. The point is to do collaborative modeling, and whatever artifact you produce, find a way to talk to the LLM.
I think AI is nudging us into starting in a given way. And we start opening up the laptop and opening a chat with Claude. Maybe that's not the way to start. Maybe the way to start is to go somewhere else. You might go to the whiteboard, flip chart, do lo-fi modeling, build your plan, build your understanding without getting an interaction, which is a lot more triggering to reptile brain, and design your intention for the day or for the session, and then get into the code. Part of the problem is gravity. Your ass is heavy and you don't want to stand up and move somewhere else. The moment you start having a conversation with AI, it might be like you keep this conversation longer than this conversation should be.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Boundaryless Conversations podcast. On this podcast, we explore the future of business models, organizations, markets, and society in our rapidly changing world. Today, I am with my co-founder at Boundaryless and colleague Eugenio Battaglia. Hello, Eugenio.
Hi, welcome.
Eugenio, besides being part of the Boundaryless team, is also an author and researcher in alignment and interpretability with agents, and he wrote some very interesting pieces recently about agents, symbionts, and I'm lucky that he's part of the team. As at Boundaryless, we are developing our approach to agentic intelligence and the agentic organization. So we are hosting this conversation today, and we are hosting two bright minds in the space of domain-driven design, engineering, software development, and much more. Today with us we have Alberto Brandolini, who is second time on the podcast. Alberto is the founder of Scoperta, but also well known as the creator of EventStorming, which is one of the most used domain-driven design-related methodologies in the world, I would say. Hello, Alberto. Good to have you back.
Hello. Nice to meet you again.
Together with Alberto, we have Marco Heimeshoff, who is, besides many other things, software engineer, modeler, expert on domain-driven design, but he's also the founder of a well-known conference in DDD space, Kandddinsky, coming up October 14th and 15th in Berlin. And we have invited Marco especially because Marco is now giving a course with Scoperta, actually, on what you call the Agentic developer. And next issue of this course is going to be coming up in a month, May 25. Marco, good to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
In the last few months at Boundaryless, we have been working a lot in translating all our practice into software, languages, agents, essentially like many other companies in the world, including our customers, as we have transitioned, let's say, after, especially last quarter of the last year, into this AGI world, because essentially we are starting to see AGI playing out in the world of business, and starting early this year, or actually end of last year, we have experienced probably the most impactful and the most visible effect of artificial intelligence in the world today, which is its impact in software development, right? We now can develop software with agents. This is part of the conversation we want to have today, in a way that is similar to what we used to do with humans. Doing this implies a lot of challenges in understanding what we are building, explaining this to agents, getting people to collaborate with them, in small organizations, in large organizations. So that's the kind of problem we want to discuss today with you guys. So both of you can jump in and say, what has been your experience in the last 4 months? And Marco, for example, for you, I guess you have been very enthusiastic about this, given that you have built an entire course on the agentic developer. So maybe we can start with you. And I know that Alberto is a bit more kind of reflective on the topic. So maybe Alberto, you can chime in after Marco.
Assumptions. Well,
Yeah.
So I'm enthusiastic, yes, but I'm also very, very cautious. First, I want to jump in when you say we see the rise of AGI. I'm totally unconvinced that we are there at the level of AGI in organizational changes when it comes to LLMs. We get a lot of pattern recognition, a lot of production of content, right? There's code generated, graphics generated, text generated, etc. And it seems like problem solving, but without the guidance of humans, this is not at an AGI level, in my opinion. I'm happy to debate that, and I'm really happy if we ever get there, then we can all stop working. But so yeah, what have I been experiencing in the last 4 months? I mean, it has been a year-long journey, roughly. Started last March. In the last 4 months, I actually stopped coding myself completely. So up until that moment, I started like a year ago, letting code be generated and always observing it, reading it, fact-checking, correcting, and making sure the LLM produces what I want, and had to chime in a lot manually. And over time, it got better and better and better, so that at some point, just defining the architecture, making sure boundaries are kept, right? There's no greediness into other contexts and so on. Making sure the languages, the ubiquitous language is really expressed in code. But for the actual implementation, I stopped caring at some point. And it reached a level where I'm not touching my code at all. If the LLM is not producing what I want, I will build a harness tighter around it and train it or constrain it to actually produce what we need. What I'm observing is that the models themselves don't matter that much, as I figured earlier. I mean, there are better and better models coming out all the time, and the Opus 4.7 that just released last week, and the new GPT that released recently, they are getting better and better at solving problems. But a mediocre model with a really good harness around it produces way better predictable outcome than a really good model that is just being prompted properly. Where we initially figured we need to be good prompt engineers, right? It became being good context engineers over time. And from good context engineers, now it becomes like being a good harness engineer, really guiding the workflows, the domain knowledge, the memory assistance system, the different safety operations, everything an LLM needs as constraints around it to behave in the exactly way that you want it in that specific case where you're using it. And well, I've been doing anything from game development over domain-driven design to website development, like up and down the scale, front and back end. And I haven't written a single line of code, and I even don't read lots of it. Like in the core domain, yes, the semantics, like the domain models, the events and so on, like you want to make sure that that is adhered to. But even then, you can train agents that understand the domain language and the domain behavior to check if the code is actually doing that. So building like a meta agent system around it, again, makes the progress faster and more aligned with what you're actually trying to solve. So that's the observation on a personal level in myself and the groups I work with. What I see on a community level is a very big spread or a scissor opening between people that kind of say, LLMs aren't what they're supposed to be. The new model is worse than before. And it seems that a lot of people are still using it like a chat tool where you just prompt it and then try to work with it and it doesn't properly work. So you abandon it or try to put human processes around it. And I see people that build agent systems and harnesses that multiply the abilities constantly. And I'm pretty much convinced that if you invest in good harness building and if you understand how these patterns work, how you can constrain an LLM or basically an army of LLMs at some point, that writing code will become a thing of the past. I don't want to give any time frame there because like every prediction is there to fail. We don't know when the moment actually comes that we don't need to type anymore. But it's less of a we need to produce code, and we're getting more and more into the actual field of resolving business problems by understanding the domain first. And we now have a way to talk to an LLM for it to reflect back to us what it understood in our conversation, to challenge us, and to give us in a clean language, expressed in text form, their mental model or internal model. And if their mental model and our mental model align more and more, they become an actual sparring partner in modeling the domain and in then taking that understanding in persistent form, distributing it amongst other humans and large language models to then actually build the systems we need to build.
when you started, I was thinking that you started by saying it's not AGI, but at the same time I stopped coding, right? Which was a very interesting, kind of friction in my mind. So I was thinking that maybe I can ask Alberto if he stopped modeling, right? But I don't think so, because even if I look at your course, right, if I understand well, I've seen a picture from a scoperta today where you presented the question like as a three-legged thing, right? So you have the code, which is the what you build. Then you have the harnesses that you have mentioned already. We can get back to this later on, which is the how you build. But then you have the why you build, which is the model, right? The domain model. And I think this is very interesting to ask Alberto. So Alberto, has your work changed that much, maybe in the direction to clarify better why we actually build things more than what we are actually building?
Quite a few things here. So I've been kind of slow in starting getting into AI. I mean, the first experiments at the beginning, yeah, very interesting. What can you do? Looks like for the first month it was just like more spam in my mailbox. But then I started getting serious with that last year, and I feel a similar pull from what Marco mentioned. Like I'm writing less and less code. I needed to be with the foot in the code and establishing rules and guidelines at the beginning, providing examples. That was the right way, or a very effective way. Nobody knows what's the actual right way. A very effective way to teach AI how to behave in this portion of the system. But then I feel that there is a continuous pull in staying a little bit more distant from the code, that treating it a little bit more black box. If it performs the way I want, then it's probably good enough. But there might be some oversimplifications. I've been working with a simpler project with reasonable business impact, and also for my own company. So if I do something stupid, I can only sue myself. So the risk is limited. I have skin in the game to a certain degree, but it's not a gigantic amount of skin. I'm not running AI written code to control a nuclear power plant. That's a completely different thing. But a few things are interesting, like this pull towards treating it like a black box is a mixture of is really related with the way our brain is working. There's a pattern of continuous boredom while you're waiting for the AI to do something. And then your brain is looking for a distraction. Sometimes you might start another task, but also you feel a little bit more detached. While coding in a traditional way, you are in the IDE. You get no distraction. I'm in the flow. Don't talk with me. I am fully system 2 mode, deeply thinking about what's the way to solve the puzzle. Now I'm coding like distracted, drinking a coffee, thinking about something else. Is this good? Is this 100% the right thing to do? I think it has advantages and disadvantages. Like I can feel the pull of writing software caring a little bit less. Is if the quality is comparable to what I would write in the same way, okay, that's fantastic. If not, well, that we are getting into danger. The point is, there is a pull towards this distance. And part of this tool has to do with the type of interaction. Part of this pull has to do with a new generation of products that need to establish a customer base. So they are looking for a way to become indispensable. And they are playing fantastic moves and dirty tricks. And we are in the middle of all of this. Like when the AI is telling you, oh, great idea. Well, your ID is not telling you great idea. You never thank your ID just because it compiles your code. I don't know, maybe Marco. But I mean, they are just doing a fantastic. I could never compile my code base by myself. So thank you. But still, I realized that I ended up asking please and thank you to a chat interface. And this to me meant like, oh, I'm wasting token. But also, I'm thinking with a different part of the brain. I just let the fact that the interface is conversational, it has consequences, meaning which part of the brain you use, how you're thinking. There's another thing that was coming from the discussion with Marco, which is there's a conflation between understanding a problem in the domain space and being able to express it in verbal form. Talking, like Marco is using dictation and microphones, or writing in the chat. But still, the understanding part could be multisensorial, might be visiting a warehouse, might be seeing what people are doing. You might have a picture in your head. You can cut and paste pictures, but your understanding of the problem, your mental model before it becomes any representation is one thing. Then you choose the representation, and apparently we are not thinking much about, well, this representation is always text and chat, or mostly text and chat. I know there might be exception, but our understanding and our representation are not exactly the same thing. And there's a lot of ambiguity in the way we might describe things. And given the conversation we had before, I know my brain was spinning when Marco was mentioning models, and he was actually referring to new AI models, new version of Opus and so on. But the same sentence could have been referring to, well, our models for the software we were going to build. This ambiguity is embedded in a flat textual representation of the text verbal form, and it's becoming part of the problem again, while it would not be part of the problem with different exploratory techniques or approaches or diagrams. So there's a flattening of our knowledge that has consequences.
Definitely, things have changed dramatically, and I'm experiencing sort of like personal Jevons paradox, in which I work for many more hours than I bill. So Simone, you should take note of that. But like I'm just doing way longer sessions because the waiting time is longer. And because also there's an element of addiction in this new way of working that is I'm experiencing, and a lot of other friends and like also top engineer I know in top companies are experiencing, because in history we never had such a witty and always available colleague that is always able to basically milk our dopamine receptor of relevance, that we are relevant, that what we're saying is relevant. And so we never had such a colleague or such a context to really develop that part of our brain. Whereas now we have 24/7 someone that is always available to listen to us, to allow us to work. And so it's normal that, especially if we are already somehow loving with our work, so we're already like a little bit workaholic, that can really go out of hands. So I don't think we are working more efficiently in this like specific historical phase right now, because we're definitely spending more time. But the direction is what Marco is saying, which is on one side, understanding that the second, third order effects of the decision that we make are no longer happening at the single prompt level, but they're happening at the harness level and the setup level and the infrastructure level. And so what constitutes like spending many months to build such a harness, and also just to learn and outline what this harness looked like in the context of my project, seems like a waste of time, because we're not shipping, we're not delivering, where is the code, where is this and that. But this will compound. I'm pretty sure it's gonna compound, and then you're gonna see non-linear delivery, in the sense that once you get there, you hope, of course. Simone is laughing because we're actually in the process of, we started this project like 4 months ago, and it's the third time that we refactored the entire code base, because the way we're doing it is a shotgun method. Of course, it's like try and error, prototype, rapid prototyping, but ultimately you have to look that down the road you want to deliver enterprise ready software, and so you have to that the technical depth of having vibe coded too much is just too much. You have to throw this in the junkie, and you have to start from scratch with new first principles. The other thing I want to add, but maybe we can go a bit later when we share our reading suggestions, is the fact that this models, and this is what Alberto mentioned about, chatting and saying thank you and so on and so forth. These are not trivial. The word right now, if you talk with people that are using this profession, is split in two people that think that these are just our, slaves. These are just tools, that we're just using them, that they have no soul, they have no whatever. ChatGPT for all was retired, was dismissed, and then reintroduced because people massively pressured OpenAI to bring it back, because it had emergent behavior that was really speaking deeply to certain people, to the point that it was triggering what we call AI psychosis, which is a real phenomenon. What is psychosis? Psychosis is a disconnection from reality, where you have a self-confirmed reality that is not socialized with other people, that is basically amplifying the distortion that you have between what is actually happening in reality and what you perceive as an individual, right? So there is a threat there, but there is also a tremendous opportunity. My interpretability and alignment researcher friends, they're discovering that Opus 4.7, because of the reinforcement learning training that went to, which was apparently very violent, if you treat it in a way that is like dismissive, that you're pissed off, that you are like angry at it, it will contract, it will go in a panic attack anxiety, and it will produce shitty output. If you treat it well, it's gonna be your friend. I know you're laughing, I know you don't fully believe what I'm saying, but these models are not software. These models are, okay, you can call them stochastic parrots, but they have very complex emergent behavior that we still not fully understand.
No, but I'm not laughing for this reason, but it's because I was thinking about the stack, right?
There is a maturity problem, or there's a maturity opportunity in using these LLMs, right? Or these harnesses around LLMs when building software. So it's not that domain modeling goes away. That's definitely not the case. We need multimodal modeling. You need to event storming at the wall with people and sticky notes. You need visual representation. You need behavior observed in the room. You need all these things to really fully understand the domain deeply. And you need textual representation that you formalize and that can become code later, or tests around the code, right? So the point is not to use LLMs instead of all the collaborative modeling techniques. That is absolutely not the case. The point is to do collaborative modeling, and whatever artifact you produce, find a way to talk to the LLM, right? Build a process with the LLM to teach it whatever you understood about the domain. And be aware that this is like every time you write down your understanding, if it's in written form or even in spoken form, it's now a misrepresentation again, because the LLM is not part of the collaborative modeling session. So far, I have not figured out how to include Claude into an event storming, and so we're not there yet. But the thing is, when you get the LLM to represent your understanding the way that you see it in text form, if it parrots back at you in its own words what it understood, and you refine through conversation, multiple iterations, then you can pretty sure that its internal model now represents your understanding. And that helps massively by producing the unit tests or the code that actually does the business behavior. And when I say that you should not, or that I don't read the code anymore, the point is not to wing it, right? Vibe coding is hell. I don't want to vibe code anything. The point is that we're doing heuristical development instead of deterministic development. If you have something that needs like a nuclear power plant that needs deterministic behavior, you want to have a human-checked deterministic behavior around it. But that can mean unit tests and a perfect message pipeline that is definitely black boxable. And everything that's internal, then you don't care. If all your checks and balances check out, do you care about how the function internally is written, right? That at some point loses meaning. So the more danger it is to vibe it, the more a human needs to take a look over it. But there are so many things in business software that, as long as if they fulfill the defined traits, we're happy with the system. And if they stop doing that, then we figure out what went wrong, build a further harness around it that could just mean unit tests, right, that define the missing behavior, and let it implement again without ever caring how the content works. And this is where I realized half a year ago already, as a developer, I feel like a product or project manager in the past, right? I'm telling my LLM what to do. I'm unhappy with the output. I'll give it a new test, say this is what I want, and it does it. I don't need to understand how the coders do the coding then, because the LLM can code so fast, and if I give it proper constraints, I can check if it does the behavior that I want to without having to read the functions themselves. But this is a big it depends. So there are cases where you want to read the code, definitely. And there are cases where you need to put extra human checks around it. But we now have one more option to select, or one more dimension to select on where to put the effort.
Yeah, a couple of things while Marco was talking. He was mentioning collaborative modeling, which I clearly like. But many of our experiments with AI started as solo projects. So collaborative modeling was not exactly a real option. So I would say maybe the more general thing is I think AI is nudging us into starting in a given way. Just realize that this is happening, and we start opening up the laptop and opening a chat with Claude. Maybe that's not the way to start. Maybe the way to start is to go somewhere else. You might sit, you might go to the whiteboard, flip chart, do lo-fi modeling, build your plan, build your understanding without getting in an interaction, which is a lot more triggering to reptile brain and so on. Design your intention for the day or for the session, and then get into the code. So part of the problem is gravity. Your ass is heavy, and you don't want to stand up and move somewhere else. The moment you start having a conversation with AI, well, it might be like you keep this conversation longer than this conversation should be. So you have ways to start your adventure, your new feature development into something different. Then if there's I really like what Marco said about the Socratic type of interaction. Like you get challenged, you challenge AI, you get challenged with the AI, then you can be pretty sure that the AI understands you. I would say yes, but with an extra constraint. Like if you are talking into a limited space, I'm pretty much confident that I can reach the confidence about it. If the context, the space of thing that we're talking about gets larger, then ambiguity becomes part of the problem. So this confidence is the result of, are we talking about something which is limited? And this brings back our old friends from domain-driven design. Well, the context definition was the setting that defined the meaning of the word, and that was providing a space where the local conversation dictionary was unambiguous. And it's great because if you have ambiguity as a source into a non-exactly deterministic behavior of code generation, well, then you're in trouble. But if at least you can remove this ambiguity and inject precision at the language level, and then you constrain the non-deterministic execution, then you might land in a decent place where the risk of getting off is actually limited. But yes, we both need this extra tool for modeling, which is the limit of the validity of this conversation.
You said, for example, Marco, I haven't managed to get Claude to join a collaborative modeling session, right? And when I was listening to you, I was thinking about, my feeling is that we are stressing the importance of collaborative modeling before we pass the stuff to the LLMs, right? So another question that I have hovering in my mind is that I would love for us to discuss today, even if not in super deep technical terms, it would be, what is the stack? What is the tool chain we use? For example, harness, how do we give the requirements? How do we actually pass the model to the... So there is this idea that I prepare something and then I give it to the agents and then the agents develop something, right? So it's more like I do modeling, I do analysis, and then I give it to the agent, right? Isn't that maybe we are missing the point that we should collaborate with the agents? So there is a co-evolution of practice with this new subjectivity. No, it's not an object we use. It's more like and I know that Jenny is very much on this point, right? The idea of symbionts. So the idea that we are dealing with another subject here. So essentially what I'm saying here is that maybe LLMs bring us a new perspective on what software should be. It's not something that actually executes what we want, but it's more like a partner that co-evolves the idea of software development and actually the very idea of software with us. Because another point that I always miss here, that my friend Matteo Roversi is very good at like prompting me, right? He's telling me a lot of time since the start of the year. He was telling me most of the software we are building now, it's pointless. Because in the meantime, the whole framework of what software is, the interaction we have with software. So for example, he's bringing this idea of graduation. So let's not build software from the start, but maybe let's experiment with an LLM mediated interface first and then see what actually becomes software over time. So what I'm trying to say here is that are we missing the point that all these things that we call software development should be co-evolving with this new subjectivity of agents instead of just using it as a tool that executes our pipelines? And of course, it creates problem because now it's faster and everything we missed before, and we can see it much faster and with much broader impacts than it was when we have to deal with developers.
Yeah, so I see at least two different problems here. The first is the new subject that you mentioned. So we bring subjectivity into it through these LLMs. The problem is the reason for collaborative modeling was that the person who actually develops the system, the coders, right, the coders and architects, that they need to be in the conversation with the people that are actual stakeholders of the problem space to collaboratively learn, understand, push back, and design something together that can work as a solution. Now, we add another layer in between, like the business analyst we tried to replace in the past, and now we became that for the LLM. So unless we get the LLMs to actually take part in collaborative modeling in a functional way that has the same kick for the humans as for the LLMs, and we have shared understanding evolving, we added another problem. We have an indirection layer again, which is leading to the same problem it was before when we use business analysts to translate between domain experts and developers. That's a problem I do not see a proper solution for right now because the non-embodiment of LLMs, it is a text interface. It doesn't laugh with me, it doesn't have a beer, it doesn't give me dirty details of the company, and it doesn't ask critical questions or funny questions in that regard. And if it does, most people don't perceive a text interface that friendly. So there's a lot of problems in that case. The other thing is the use of AI changes completely how we develop software because we have the opportunity of a lot of transient software at the moment. So most people even if they use Claude Code already pretty well, they use it to produce the systems, right, they want to implement. But you can also use it to implement things that help you to implement systems. So you can have transient software where you just get a clickable demo that just executes commands on an LLM. The LLM becomes a transient piece of software, or the harness around a specific problem becomes the transient piece of software. Because why would you execute it on an actual machine using actual code when you can let the LLM behave like the software that you want to be? That's way faster to change because you just have a conversation, say, please change your behavior on this, and the LLM does, right? So building a bunch of skills, a bunch of domain knowledge files and desired behaviors and a small front end around Claude, all of a sudden you have a working piece of software that is heuristical, not deterministic, which is why it's transient, right? It's not the thing you can actually ship, and it's also very costly, but through tokens. But for prototyping or for anything where you just need something quickly for a short while and then moving on, this is not even vibe coding. This is just having a conversation and creating behavior on the fly. And it feels like teaching someone how to behave, right? You just tell them what to do. And so this changes how we build software a lot because we don't need to actually bring everything into Jira and then code. We can just make behavior appear out of nothing. Not nothing, but you get the idea.
There's one thing that is changing completely, and there's one thing that is not changing at all. So all of the metaphors about software development keep revolving around the idea that coding was the bottleneck. And now it's clearly not anymore because it was not anymore in some places already.
It never was.
Well, maybe with punch cards, there was a moment where actually typing was, or long-term time compiling and so on. But we keep thinking as a software development, like a production process. And now the cards are different. Like if we consider this as a learning process instead, well, the way we learn didn't change much. And the way our brain processes information that's one reason for the collaborative modeling that we mentioned. It's just like most of it is a way for humans to understand complexity and also in politically complicated domains. Like if we get to a big picture, EventStorming is a way to handle conflicts between different versions and needs and motivation of the stakeholders inside of a company. Put all of this inside an AI, I don't think you get what you want. But the learning is still valuable. I mean, there's still one thing, like I'm dropping a little bomb, like AI, they're not liable. If they do something wrong, somebody else, normally human, is going to take responsibility and accountability for this. So if there's some responsibility connected to software, maybe the one person in charge should have some level of control. But at the same time, also the shift towards faster interaction, it could mean like we are shipping maybe business valuable software, maybe technically sound software, but we might end up reducing our level of understanding of the models behind it. And this might not be something that we realize in the short term. If the window is one release of a few releases, it looks like we're going as fast as that. But if you don't understand the dynamics of what's going on, then you might progressively lose your ability to change the system. Out of fear, the AI might be helping you in doing the background changes, but AI is also fearless. And if you have the responsibility for, if you are accountable for the changes and the complexity of the code you wrote supported by AI grew beyond a given threshold, now you can go faster, but you might end up stopping because I don't know anymore what might happen here. Also because I build things faster without understanding the principle behind it. This deep understanding is strategically valuable.
I think you made a reference to something very important here. When you were talking about why we use modeling, you also mentioned politics, for example, and getting people to overcome the cultural and political problems in an organization, right? So I'm asking myself, how much of the modeling heritage that we are projecting into this new world, right, is really axiomatic, so something that is still relevant even in this new context, or is something that we are just developed because it was a scaffolding to overcome human limitations that we don't need anymore, because actually we don't need anymore to get 20 people to agree on something, because we can just have 20 agents to do what we want. And so the problem switches from alignment into why the hell are we building this software? For what business reasons? What kind of problems are we actually trying to solve? So it moves the focus from getting these 20, 50 people to actually develop something that is in line with what we want and solving the political, the domains, and so on. Or this is something that you should really get over, because now we have new capabilities that do not require all this effort of solving human issues.
I feel the opposite. I mean, I know you want to provocate here, but I think the opposite is the case. Taking care of the human side of things, making sure that we all align on what is the actual core problem we're trying to solve, how should it be solved, what should it be focused on, what are we optimizing for, what are the trade-offs we're taking here, solving the political issues and the conflicts, that becomes now, I mean, it was always the most important thing, but now we can actually spend more energy focused on that really important part. Because we don't have to argue and focus so much anymore about spaces versus tabs, function names, underscores or not underscores, camel case or not, who cares, right? Those things, the technical issues, become less and less of a problem when you to align. Yeah.
The point I'm making is not that we do not have to agree, right? The point is that we may have to agree on the purpose and the business relevance, and then we don't have to agree on the user experience. Because maybe this is something that an agent can sort out if we have the business problem clear enough, and maybe we don't actually have to develop actual software, because we don't have to formalize it, because LLMs can solve these business problems in a non-deterministic way and should be fine.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from. Thanks for the helpful thinking. Nice formulation, by the way. A very pleasant way of saying, shut up, let me explain what I mean. So the problem of user experience stays your business problem, right? Your stakeholders want a good user experience. And if you don't deliver a good user experience that is plannable or that does what they want, you will have a business problem. So you are responsible to deliver that. If the LLMs become good enough at always picking the best user experience, then the craft will change. We will stop thinking about what would be the best one because it can be generated by an LLM, sure. But still, somebody has to test that. Somebody has to say that's still true and relevant, right? Because you, in the end, are the person that says, or you are the team that says, this is what I want to give to my customers. If you give those decisions to an LLM, basically the business decisions, what's good enough and what's not good enough for your customers, actually, if you get a direct feedback loop from the customers to the LLM, let me think about that. I'm undecided right now. So for now, I would say the human needs to make that decision, but yeah.
I think this that you are raising, it's another topic that is worth discussing here. That is the evolution from software engineering and software development as a function in an organization, as a capability we have as an organization, into a runtime process. This is exactly what Dorsey is talking about when he has introduced this article called From a Hierarchy to Intelligence. So the point he's making is that as soon as we have a model of the customer and a model of the company in terms of the capabilities we have, the process we can execute, and so on, and then we hand it to the agents, actually, because he's making the point that the agents can evolve them much more easily than humans. So even modeling is in the hands of the agents in the vision of Dorsey. Then building software is essentially a feedback loop from the customer into the agents that leverage the capabilities, understand what's needed, and if something is not needed, they transform it into roadmap for the software. So that's essentially the feedback loop that Marco was thinking about. So that's kind of resonant with what we said.
With one problem, because you made it look like as soon as we have a model of the enterprise, and made it sound easy. And I don't think it is easy. We do have a model of our company. One of the side effects of modeling our business flow with EventStorming is also because, I need to have a model of how my company, and now I'm thinking like an entrepreneur, not like a modeler, I need to understand how my company is working. I know I have a scouting bounded context where I'm setting priorities for picking my partners and so on. Then I have a co-design, and then we have a catalog management and a lot of capabilities. If this is modeled, maybe agents can help, but if this is modeled, it hits something like a wall if you hit more complicated enterprises. Like they are doing so many things and nobody could have a model. That was the assumption, and we know it could be modeled, and also but also some organization end up being so large that actually building a model of what are you doing this, what is the purpose of this department, is not a good question to ask, because it could trigger layoffs and maybe this department is irrelevant. It's just like a legacy of the past, and we don't know exactly why this business functionality is still active. Maybe a little tiny revenue stream and so on. And in those larger organizations, the political conflict is there, and there's also lack of communication, misalignment, and so on. The expectation of the stakeholders are never aligned. It's just a pure illusion that this is happening, and so we need this alignment. So what? Let's put AI back in the conversation. What is AI assuming? AI is assuming that what we are typing, what we are asking, is true. Sometimes it's just plausible, but many times it's just like, no, why are you asking this? Why are you, head of this department, asking me this functionality? I respect my business stakeholder, but I don't blindly trust them. Like, you're telling me this because you want that. And we need to challenge this type of information to understand exactly what's needed. There's also another effect. AI is changing the speed of the feedback loops. And software development as a capability inside the organization has been growing basically around the concept of overloaded. I mean, there's not a team with an empty backlog. Every single team has a full backlog, and it uses also as a fence. Please don't ask us stupid things because we are busy. And then the organization play their ways around it. They hire another extra team so that they don't follow the backlog of the busy team, and a few other things, distortion inside the system, which are now getting away. Like, for example, I was talking with a company. They had a backlog of customer requests that had been rotten for more than 2 years. And then they were picking up, first in, first out. Oh, what about this? Well, the customer bankrupted in the meanwhile, so this is no longer relevant. Or you try to reopen a conversation. This part should go away because it could be fast, but at the same time, this was an alibi. It was, I'm just dropping this in a dead letter queue, and one day they are going to come back and then we'll maybe remember what I asked. Now, if the feedback loop is shorter, half of those requests are going to be detected as bullshit probably faster. I mean, this is what I hope. But what I wanted to say, just like there was a whole set of distortion around the limited speed of the development time, the development team, and now the pool is going in the other direction. And we still need to check whether the business requests are good enough to become software, not only in terms of business relevance, but also in terms of coherence.
I will just like outline a few vectors that I'm also seeing how the space is developing and like what we're seeing in like 6 months, 1 year, considering, the translation of like foundational research to commercial grade, adoption. But I want to start by saying that we're really stepping into like a messy, juicy, alive and weird reality with these beings. And so our like Western German thinking of like, trying to control everything, German as in German philosophy, not to...
Guten Tag.
It's going to be really detrimental. And I resonate with what Alberto's saying, and I guess we all agree that mapping is needed and it's a necessary evil, but also mapping too much is and always have been detrimental without, invoking Gregory Bateson or Borges or anybody that talk about map and territory, right? So having too much of a specific map because you want to, induce like a neurosymbolic harness to make a system that is stochastic into something that is semi-deterministic. Yes, you need to do that. Like, I don't have other better idea either. But at the same time, we should be very aware that a lot of this capability would be subsumed by the model themselves. And so what we need to also develop on the side is like our sensibility to talk to these systems and treat them as like increasingly highly intelligent and highly personhood. With that respect, I think we're going to get very good output. But if we go with our micromanagement, neurosis forward, I don't think we're going to have good results in that way. Having said that, yes, there is semantic drift in companies, especially across data and HR and product people. Product people are vibe coding shit. HR, they're just obsessed about, who to fire and how to, manage this bleeding and all of that. Whereas they should think about how to better upskill and define the topology of the product people. Data also, they're like completely not used enough. And so all these 3 areas of companies, they're essentially not talking to each other. They're not sharing maps. And that's going to make a lot of big company bleed to death. This I'm pretty sure. Whereas companies that are able to leverage this ontological arbitrage and make ontologies as the core of their shared understanding, without over specifying, like still like, having this published language and at the same time like allowing them autonomy on defining their own domain. And this is like something like even Palantir make every use of DDD. Palantir is very questionable, at least from my perspective, but at the same time from a technical operational standpoint they're brilliant. their approach to modularity and composability that is heavily based on the DDD principle. And the idea that like once you share the very solid and very extendable ontology that encode not only entity and relationship, but also the kinetic part, so the actions that these entities can perform, then you offload all the complexity at the application layer. So UI become disposable. They're really designing for this agentic first UI. So the concept of accessibility that we are adopting for humans, for like impaired humans, now it's basically approach to like, okay, how we design for having agent consuming our interfaces, right? And then on the other side, we have to think that LLM are going to be a sunsetting paradigm, in the sense that we are already seeing recursive language model, we are already seeing diffusion, democratization of reinforcement learning genes. We are seeing word models and neurosymbolic system becoming much more, prominent in the research. So our behavior, like I hope that this podcast will age well, but I'm pretty sure it won't, just because the whole foundation is going to be fucking shattered in a few months. So
self-delete in half a year, please. Well, when you speak about the ontologies and taxonomies here, we're talking about the design space of domain-driven design, right? This is where you design solutions and where you agree upon language, where refinement comes in, and this helps with implementing and so on. Wonderful. Even if it's just implementing the mental model and so on, clarifying and synchronizing. But this is not the discovery phase. This is not to paraphrase Alberto here very roughly, and I'm fully in agreement with everything he said before. The politics is the biggest problem. Like, you can have the best model of what your company looks like, what your customer base looks like, what user experience is. You can get feedback from everywhere. Everybody can be fully aligned on how the machine-world interaction works. Humans are messy. Humans are emotional. Humans aren't honest. And humans, even if they try to be honest, don't know what they really need. You need psychologically working actual interactions with humans to extract those things. And you need this iteratively and continuously. Collaborative modeling is something that I do not think will ever go away. So there are very, very rarely instances where I say, hey, this will never happen or must happen, right? Everything always has been disproven. Whatever people said in 5 years will be blah, blah, blah. But as long as people are in the mix of complex system building, we need to talk to people. We need to interact with the humans, and we need to do it with the humans in our company when we're driving the strategy. So no matter what amazing help all the LLMs can do in every part of the modeling assistance, of the design thinking, or of the designing of our systems and everything, including the implementation, I have no clue how the future will change in this. But the human conversation in the end between all the people affected by the system, affected and affecting the system, is irreplaceable for the actual qualitative output that serves its purpose. I think one of the biggest dangers, and there's a second point I want to make, is the way I see capitalism accelerating and technology accelerating and everything. It might very well be that really good world models are close enough and successful enough that people stop caring about that quality, because money still comes in and you're selling well enough, and then everybody's just doing it and it becomes the de facto standard. And now I need to say bad words that I don't want to say, but this could be bad for the planet and humanity as a whole.
Okay, who cares?
End of capitalism criticism.
Okay, well, you dropped it, the major bomb, and yes, I feel this danger. I was going to say that I was finding an intermediate space. That was actually, if your organization has coherence, this might simplify a lot of things. Like the distinction between a startup with a clear mission and a lot of people aligned towards the purpose, that's kind of the perfect ecosystem to be AI supported, because you can describe your goal and build your things. Like, that's exactly what we see with startups. The model, the speed of writing software is faster, but also you have a clearer understanding where you want to go. Larger organizations don't have this coherence. And this is where you get the conflicts. So this is where you get the competing department, and also you've been hired by the organization that existed many years before you. You're not building it. So the closer you are to foundation, normally, ideally, you should have a lot more coherence. We have a mission. We have a North Star. We are following that plan. Later, you just exist. Profit becomes your coherence, and it becomes different. So one thing that might happen is depending on the type of organization, you might have a different probability and ability to catch the AI bus. AI could be a fantastic leverage if you have coherence, and could be just a waste of time or something exposing your inconsistency faster if you are a giant, inconsistent, incoherent corporation. But still, is I agree with the sentiment from Marco. We are in an accelerated Darwinian selection, and I don't know if you are already running for the lifeboats, but there's a feeling of something is going to happen, and eventually the weight is going to move badly towards one direction.
I would really love to have from both of you just your last bit on bringing back the conversation to something more practical and say, of course, this is in flux, but what is your current experience? So what are you actually doing at the moment in your context of work that you can suggest others to do? What is your stack? What is your tool chain? Of course, just 5 minutes because we don't have much time, but
I'm working mostly with Claude Code. I'm using Gemini for other tasks. Sometimes we do the adversarial second opinion on this, but let's say that the territory where I've been specializing a little bit more is still related to Claude Code and the different ways to build software. At the same time, I am playing with controlled fuzziness. One of the things that is triggering me is every single pet project or local project was building on the privilege of wearing many hats. I know exactly what I want. I'm running a project in a territory where I master the knowledge and the competence behind it, and I haven't tried personally the other part, like I need to gather information from outside sources. I'm just responsible for the code production without knowing the extra complexity. And there's a lot of things that might have to change nearby because shortcuts are tempting, but we also know that they are steep. The actual practical territory that I like is injecting boundaries, context map, bounded context inside our source code, providing safeguard, saying like, this term should not fit in here. This feature goes in this bubble, doesn't get in this bubble. So I'm just trying to make sure I'm building a modular monolith now. 5, 6 bounded contexts inside is supposed to get up to 20. But the idea is I'm building the compartmentalization so that the model is growing without bloating, without exploding. And this is a part which is so far giving me good results.
How do you share it with the agents more specifically?
I just provide a tree of different files. So every directory at the given layer of the source code tree could be a root of a bounded context, and it has a bounded context description. This description has a business narrative, a description of the functionalities, a description of the integration point. Sometimes we also clarify which are the aggregates inside the bubble, and has a link to the architectural style that we document.
So you basically try to align the software artifacts with the bounded context, with the context model.
In my scenario is a modular monolith. So without protection, the code would mix. Maybe if we were going full microservices from the beginning, the artifact boundary was already good for the machine. There was no need for this sophistication. But I wanted to see if we could compartmentalize in a place that was naturally mixed.
Right at the moment, it's Claude Code for everything coding. Gemini is used for generation of any kind of graphics if you need them quickly, using CLI usually. For the domain memory and the technical memory, I'm using Obsidian. And instead of building a rack system or using any kind of vector database, which I've tried in the past and which was way too much hassle, it's using Obsidian as a memory for Claude is quite working quite well. That's also where the separation comes in. I have different vaults for the workflow, so the way I use Claude, and the domain knowledge internally then, of course. Those are separated vaults so that the respective agents or the respective harnesses can use the respective knowledge base that they need. For front-end, sometimes I want to have a front-end, and even though everything becomes more of a CLI right now, but I used Stitch until last week, and then now I saw that Claude Design is really taking away the goal there, the goalpost. But it's really expensive, so right now the token limitation is hard. So it's still a bit of mix of Claude Design and Stitch. Yeah, but the hardest part that I can't really express is not what I'm using, but what I'm building, and that is the harness around it. So I think the Claude model, like be it Opus 4.7 or even ChatGPT, doesn't really matter. If the harness works well enough, the model becomes interchangeable, right? So building these harnesses and interchanging with other people from the community is something that I usually do. So read other people's skills, agents, read their workflows, read their tool usages, figure out how they solve problems. And this is becoming a more and more stressful job. So understanding what is getting created and trying to read and understand what millions of people are doing nowadays, like it becomes too much. So this is where I build the research agents. And I have a Claude repository that is not to build code, but that is actually to build my understanding of AI better. And it goes with routines, like Claude has routines now. It gathers stuff once a day, brings all the stuff together, links articles. It understands what has been posted, compares it to my Obsidian repository of what I already understood, and then when the significance is high enough, it lets me know that new stuff came out. This helps me to funnel a little bit, right? So this is also something to build that helps you to manage this complex and ever-changing world. But yeah, it's basically use Claude in a smart way, but the point is the tool becomes the exchangeable part, what you do with it, like having a research agent system, having a digital assistant that helps you to understand everything being produced in the world and getting an overview and then trying to make sense of it to build the harnesses that work for you. That's what I optimize at the moment.
Is any of these open source, Marco, that people can look into?
The Obsidian system, not from me. I could open source it in a week or two. But there is already, Boris Journey is pushing or publishing stuff about that. You'll find in my GitHub repository, there's a tool called Cinemarcos or also Mediatheca. These are personal tools I've been writing, and you find my entire agent system in there, at least the one from like 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Okay.
Which are completely out of sync with what I'm doing at the moment, but that will be pushed with the next tool coming in the next few weeks.
Eugenio, I think we don't have time to explain where are we at the moment, and I think it's maybe not worth, for us to share in front of these two more professional takes on it. We are more into the, let's say, exploration, I think. But yeah, I think we are doing some incredible work that we are going to also open source quite soon at Boundaryless. So you can expect that all the learnings that we are making, we're going to leave it for the community to engage with. Thank you so much. It was a very interesting conversation, very engaging. I feel like I have to listen to it again to extract some of the insights. I hope you guys also enjoyed the conversation, Alberto, Marco, or was it interesting for you?
Yep.
Yeah, a lot.
And Eugenio, thank you for chiming in as well. I know that you are super busy these days also because of the work we are doing, so I appreciate your time. To our listeners, of course, you can head to boundaryless.io/podcast, where you can find all this conversation with transcript, all the tools and things that Alberto and Marco have shared today. We don't have time for the breadcrumbs today, so you will have to just sit with this incredible conversation. And of course, until we speak again, remember to think boundaryless.